Mohato Seiso, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, Her Excellency Minata Samate Sesuma, the Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development at the African Union Commission, Governor of the African Development Bank Group representing Lesotho, Dr. Adelaide Retseli Sitswe Matlanyane, Honorable Ministers, Sir Chris Huhn, Chair of the Board and Founder of the Children Investment Fund Foundation, Founder of the Aliko Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, the Senior Vice President of the Rockefeller Foundation, Roy Steiner, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, development partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this side event at UNGA 2024. Thank you for turning out so early this morning, bright and early. I see that most of us have had our favorite drink this morning, coffee, tea, whatever it is, and everybody's looking really great. Now, because we're running approximately 32 minutes behind schedule, we're going to move very expeditiously. So we do promise to speak fast, and your deal is to listen fast, and we will be out of here at 11 as planned. My name is Victor Oladokun, and it is really an honor and a privilege to be the MC of this event this morning. Today, we're gathered for one purpose, and for one purpose only: to harness our collective strengths and to see what is infinitely possible when Africa's leading development finance institution partners and collaborates in very powerful and strategic ways with equally powerful global philanthropies. We gather to explore how the African Development Bank Group and our philanthropic partners and co-hosts, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Aliko Dangote Foundation, in conjunction with the African Union Commission, can seize Africa's immense opportunities and unleash the exponential power of strategic partnerships for sustainable development, prosperity, and resilience. That's really why we're here this morning. And we gather against a background of interconnected global challenges that are complex, and they affect everything from the devastating effects of climate change, inadequate healthcare, water and sanitation, as well as its impacts on national debt and massive resource displacement, particularly as our partners deal with the consequences of conflict and of war. That's our background. However, as the once famous musicians Nicholas Ashford and Valerie Simpson, I guess I'm giving a little bit away about my age here, they once said, "Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, and ain't no river wide enough." Similarly, I truly believe that with the huge intellectual capital, the political will, and the massive financial and technological capital that we have at our disposal as co-hosts and as partners, together, ain't no challenge or mountain high enough, and ain't no challenge or valley low enough, and ain't no challenge or river wide enough that can get in the way of your visionary leadership represented here today as we seek to further unlock Africa's huge potential in order to create a more resilient Africa. Our session today will be in three parts. It will consist of opening remarks, as well as a signing of a letter of intent and a moderated roundtable that will be fast and furious. With that being said, let me welcome to the podium our first speaker, who throughout a very rich and diverse career, it must be said, has not met a development mountain too high enough, or a development valley too low enough, nor a development river too wide enough that he thinks it is impossible to overcome. For this reason and much more, he's been called Africa's optimist-in-chief. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this morning, please give a very warm New York welcome as he comes to the podium to set the stage for our session, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I've known Victor since he had a lot of hair at that time, and I can tell you these are memories of things we used to do and dance around. So, Your Majesty, King Letsi III of the Kingdom of Lesotho, and the African champion for nutrition. And in fact, when we asked you to be the African champion for nutrition, I did tell you, Your Majesty, that you are very tall, and we want every kid to be as tall as you. And so thank you for being a great champion for, give it up to him because he's doing a great job for us. And Your Majesty, Queen Masenate Mohato says so. Welcome very much, Your Majesty. It's nice to see you. My co-organizer, my friend, Sir Chris Hun, the founder and the chair of the Children Investment Fund Foundation, the partners, my dear brother and friend, Aliko Dangote, the founder of Dangote Foundation, Roy Steiner, Senior Vice President of the Gates Fund, of the Rockefeller Foundation, and of course, the AU Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, my sister, honorable ministers, in fact, my governor from Lesotho, Minister Motlan Yane, and heads of organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Good morning to you all. I'm truly delighted that you can join us this morning. I wish to thank Chris for agreeing to co-organize this with us, and thank you very much to also the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation is also here, Rockefeller Foundation and others for being part of this. I thank you for finding time to be with us today as we discuss and explore how the African Development Bank and other philanthropies can work together for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient Africa. This week at the United Nations General Assembly, they adopted a landmark pact for the future. Delivering on this to advance sustainable development goals will require significant levels of financing at a time of dwindling official development assistance. Yet, the cost of achieving these SDGs have increased from $2.5 trillion to $4 trillion today, the financing needs of Africa alone being $1.3 trillion. The African Development Bank plays a big role, of course, in mobilizing resources for Africa. And it is the premier financial institution in Africa, the only AAA-rated financial institution on the continent, and therefore we are able to raise a significant amount of capital on the global capital markets to drive development for the continent. And I think the African Development Bank is what you hear, but we also have what's called the African Development Fund, which is a concessional window of the African Development Bank Group that provides concessional financing for low-income countries. The African Development Bank focuses on 5 areas of work, which is, we call them the high fives, to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa, and to improve the quality of life for the people of Africa, which has to do with health, water, sanitation, and also the whole issue of nutrition that we're talking about and stunting and stuff like that. Today, in the past 7 years, these high fives, as we call them, has impacted the lives of more than 400 million people. And therefore, we, as your partner, we work at scale, and we have the resources to deliver measurable impacts on the ground. Philanthropies like yourself, we are very delighted to have you here today, have specifically unique characteristics that make you very important strategic partners to accelerate development efforts. Foundations, philanthropies, they take long-term perspectives. They provide catalytic financing for initiatives. They build human and institutional capacities. They bolster knowledge creation, and they show best practices. Because they are also very nimble, they can pilot programs and inform what works or what doesn't work, while fostering innovations and leveraging learnings between actors for best practices. Philanthropic organizations play a critical role in bridging funding gap and are significant contributors to global economic development. The organization, the OECD, Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development's data indicates that in 2022, private philanthropic organizations contributed $10.4 billion towards global development, up from $3.4 billion in 2013. That data shows that Africa is the largest beneficiary of this, receiving $2.9 billion per year. However, because the resources of foundations comparatively are small, they are not able to scale interventions on their own, especially in countries. This presents a compelling need for strategic partnerships between foundations, philanthropies, and the multilateral development banks like ourselves, the African Development Bank. These can be achieved in many ways, and some of these will include co-financing of programs, where foundations provide seed funding, and the African Development Bank scales up the interventions through large-scale financing and also policy dialogue with governments. Philanthropy's capital can also be used effectively as risk capital, including as first loss to de-risk private sector financing to mobilize private capital. The grant nature of philanthropic financing makes them ideal for blended finance with lowest weighted cost of capital for development. Foundations can establish trust funds at the African Development Bank, which are dedicated to specific programs or policy areas of interest. For example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Trust Fund at the bank supports a range of interventions, including water, sanitation, agriculture, urban development, and digital financial inclusion, as well as health. The support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the bank's technology for African agricultural transformation, along with that of the Rockefeller Foundation, have been critical to our success. Now we have more than 12 million farmers having access to climate-resilient agricultural technologies at scale because of that work. That catalytic support has translated into big impact on the ground. Dear friends, new models of cooperation of how foundations are working together among themselves are also emerging, where multiple foundations, bilateral and multilateral institutions are working together. A good example of that is the Global Alliance on Energy for People and the Planet, GEP, which brings together some of the largest foundations, Rockefeller Foundation, IKEA Foundation, and the Bezos Art Fund, to support the development of distributed energy in Africa and, of course, globally. GEP is working together with the African Development Bank and the World Bank on our largest effort we call Mission 300, which is to connect 300 million Africans to electricity by 2030. Also, the Dangote Foundation, the Big Win Philanthropy, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the Children Investment Foundation, are working together with the bank on nutrition, including the African Leaders for Nutrition, which is chaired by His Highness, His Majesty. Indeed, later at this event, I'll be signing a memorandum of understanding with Sir Chris Hahn, who is doing an incredible job, actually with regard to his foundation in terms of getting access to school feeding at scale to children. We'll be signing a memorandum of understanding, an indication of the strength of our partnerships on this particular critical issue. The Education Above All Foundation, also represented here today, works with the African Development Bank on tackling the scourge of out-of-school children. And I was mentioning this to His Majesty that we have to actually deal with this particular issue. It doesn't matter what we do on nutrition school feeding programs. If we have hundreds of millions of kids that are out of school, we're not going to get anywhere. Philanthropies can do even more. They can become non-state contributors to the African Development Fund. They can also invest in the hybrid capital recently launched by the African Development Bank, as the bank also is opening up what we call the families and friends tranche of that hybrid capital. Opportunities to work together with philanthropies are compelling in several areas of bank's initiative, including the Affirmative Finance Action for Women, which is actually providing $5 billion for women businesses. The MasterCard Foundation is working with the bank in the development also of what we call youth entrepreneurship investment banks that will support the businesses of young people across Africa. Foundations may also wish to consider partnering with the bank on programs and interventions in the areas of conflict as we build resilience and in fragile environments, and as we deepen our engagements on the nexus between humanitarian and development spheres. As I close, I want to say that the African Development Fund will be at its 17th replenishment, and we've set our goal to be raising $25 billion for that. So I would like to ask for your advocacy and support in trying to do that, because that will be really critical to support low-income countries and fragile states, and of course, to also tackle climate change. So let's take advantage of this forum this morning and continue conversations to come up with concrete plans for larger and also deeper strategic collaboration between the African Development Bank and all of you, the philanthropies, so that we can actually solve problems at scale. I know you're ready. We are ready. It's a great marriage, so let's get it started, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Additioner, for helping set the stage for our session this morning. We'll segue very quickly, in the interest of time, into opening remarks by a truly visionary voice of our time, whose organization has been a powerful and very creative force in supporting initiatives that tackle hunger and educational access, particularly for Africa's most vulnerable children, and through a strong focus on ending school-age hunger. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please give again a warm welcome to Sir Chris Hahn, Chair of the Board and founder of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, otherwise popularly known as CIF.
Good morning. About a year or so ago, a Kenyan woman called Wawira came to us and said she has a disruptive new technology that can transform Africa. We said, what's that? She had low-cost school feeding. And she was doing it in Kenya at 25 cents or so a meal, and the parents were co-paying 15 cents. High quality, large portion sizes, full nutrition. We gave her $10 million. I gave it to her personally to put the equipment into Nairobi. The government made a commitment of $65 million for school feeding. And today, every child in Nairobi is getting a free school meal. I think actually the parents are paying 5 cents copay, and so not quite free, but close to. And it's a reality, not something to put on paper, not something to dream about, but it's a reality today. So this can be done. Why hasn't it been done? Okay, well, 2 reasons. Nobody had figured out how to do it at very low cost, which is an important barrier. And but actually, it's not hard. Okay, and we took Wawira to a conference called Audacious for billionaires. She raised $125 million. I was there. They were so compelled by the idea. Okay, this summer. So philanthropists are stepping up. But what's the other reason why this hasn't been done? School feeding across Africa. I think people haven't cared enough, governments haven't prioritized it enough. Now, I went to Kenya to see the program in action, and in a primary school, and was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life, because I could see these children as they lined up for their meal. They were fixated on the meal as they lined up in the queue, because they understood the importance of that meal, which might be the only meal that they'd had that day. Many of these children come to school with no breakfast and no lunch. They cannot learn with no food. So the school becomes pointless. Okay? And it was so clear as you looked into the eyes of these children to see, A, the divinity within them, and secondly, what a beautiful thing it was. So I did something I don't like to do. I cried. Okay? So the school feeding is a silver bullet. People like to say there's no silver bullet for development, but I don't agree. This is one of them. Because it serves education. Enrollment in these schools was up 30%. That's incredible. And instead of learning nothing because they're starving, they could learn. And also, attendance and out of school went down dramatically, and so lowering child marriage and all of these other things. So school feeding isn't just a malnutrition thing, it's an education solution. 2 for 1. Okay? And the price, because every price always matters, we can do this for $40 a child per year. Give them a massive solution for malnutrition when 30, 40, 50% of children in many African countries are stunted, as well as give them the education they need. So it's an affordable thing. There are really no excuses not to do this. And more than affordable, it's a moral imperative. We should not feel comfortable. Yeah, what do I mean by that? Our conscience should trouble us. If we eat and we are comfortable to see children hungry every day when we could do something simple about it. Because what is it that stands in the way? Political will. Because I think we can design these programs to get down to 15 cents, 20 cents a meal. Okay? If we can send, men to the moon, we can design a low-cost, high-quality school meal. Yes? Clever businessman like Mr. Dangote here can sure figure it out. Use the micronutrients in there. Get the recipe right. My friend from the Rockefeller Foundation has a low-cost recipes. Yeah, we know about micronutrients. Yeah, we can do this. And parents are willing to co-pay. In the program I saw, parents were co-paying 15 cents on a mobile money wristband. Okay, it worked. And so some places they can afford 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents. It will vary by region. But the combination of very low cost, very low price point for the meal and co-pay can increase sustainability. Get to that point where the contribution from government and philanthropy is limited. Okay? That's where we need to go to so that this thing can scale. Okay? But it's, from our experience in Kenya, we know it is feasible, and Food for Education with that $125 million is going to go into 5 more African countries. And so it's our great honor to make a $50 million commitment of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation to this partnership with the African Development Bank. But the African Development Bank can help us do something that we aren't as well placed as them to do, which is increase political will of the heads of state to get behind this. We can help bring partners and technology and execution and design, but we must have political will, and it is time now to end what is correctly called a scourge, a stain on all our consciences that we have food and children don't have food. That can't continue. And so this is a beautiful program that we're committing large-scale money behind. Yep, I'm a personal donor to it, and we're going to make it happen. That's the bottom line. So thank you to everybody here today.
Sir Chris Han, thank you for your very inspirational remarks on behalf of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. I don't think we heard what he said a few moments ago. It's a $50 million commitment. That is worth applauding. That's the power of partnership and leverage. And together with the African Development Bank, that is money that can go really far. It is not a dream, but it's a reality. And as Sir Chris Hunt says, our conscience should trouble us. After all, every single one of us in this room were once children. 700 million children across Africa, many of them school age. Our consciences should indeed trouble us, and we must collectively do something to make a difference. Now, SIF will be followed by an institution that really for more than a century has had a major, major impact on our world across many sectors in advancing public health, combating food insecurity, and championing innovation at scale. And I really, really mean that. To share the Rockefeller's vision for increasing its footprint in Africa and creating lasting change, please welcome to the podium, right next to me, the Rockefeller Foundation's Senior Vice President, Roy Stanner, who has 3 minutes to make his remarks as the King, I gather, will be leaving shortly. Roy, over to you.
All right, thank you so much. It's wonderful to welcome you to our hometown. Obviously, you know, if many people don't know, but we donated the land for the United Nations, so you can blame the traffic on us. So one of the things that I think is so amazing about what Chris said is that school meals is really coming to the fore. I would disagree, though, Chris, on one thing. You said it's a 2-for-1. It's actually a 6-for-1. Not only is it a nutrition security, but it's an economic development play. It's a education play. It's a gender play. Girls go to school more and stay in school longer. It's a climate action play. And I think and it's an adaptation and mitigation play. So I think there's so many things that school meals do that we're starting to understand. And it's one of the reasons why the School Meals Coalition has been the most successful coalition after the Food Systems Summit. 100 countries have signed on to that. But as Akin mentioned, who's my brother and was a Rockefeller Foundation colleague, we need to work together. And so the Rockefeller Foundation, along with the School Meals Coalition, Nova Nordis, the Global Partnership for Education, are working to develop a school meals delivery unit as part of the School Meals Coalition that will work with countries to develop the most effective, efficient, cost efficient, as Chris mentioned. It's not easy to go from 2 to 10 million kids. It's not easy to feed 20 to 30% of the population, and we need to provide the technical assistance to countries. So we invite anybody who wants to be involved with this. We can only do this together. So thank you so much, and I'm being asked to go. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy, for your truly brief, concise, and actionable thoughts and your remarks with regards to the collaborative partnership on school delivery initiatives. Now, we're greatly honored to have with us this morning a visionary leader who, for the lack of a better phrase or word, has captured the imagination of the world. He does not understand the word impossible, and he continues to succeed against the greatest of odds. Representing one of Africa's largest philanthropic foundations is Alhaji Aliko Dangote. But just before he comes, Alhaji, just take a seat. It is safe to say that Alhaji Dangote packs into 1 year what many do not in a whole lifetime. And for several decades, quite quietly and quite strategically, he has been at the forefront of championing the role of private sector-led philanthropy, addressing some of our most pressing challenges. Again, this morning, please give a very warm New York City welcome to the founder of the Aliko Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote himself, as he comes to the podium.
Your Majesty, the King of Lesotho, my brother and dear friend, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the AFDB group, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen that are here, all other protocols duly observed. Well, thank you very much. I was just having a side chat with my brother here that, one of the greatest thing for us in the foundation is actually feeding. And we take it very, very, very serious, especially with the hunger in Africa. For the last 25 years, we've been feeding almost 12,000 people every day, and we have not stopped to date. And then we also have designed something where we give about 32,500 loaves of bread, family size, since the beginning of COVID, because when people were asked to stay at home. And after COVID, we found it very difficult to withdraw that, so we continue doing that. But my brother here, Akin, Dr. Adishina, said that we should try and leverage and do a much, much bigger, which I think we're ready to pump in a lot of money in terms of feeding. Like what I keep saying, our foundation work will actually maybe triple in the next, from next year, because we've already finished our focus, which was the mega projects, which we've been doing for the last 7 years. Now that we've crossed the line, I think we should channel most of our money to foundations work. So on that note, it is really a great pleasure to be with you, here this morning. And, I know that most of you must have been very busy. Some of you went to bed very late. But thank you very much for turning up. I'm looking forward to having a discussion today with my brother, Dr. Adeshina, about philanthropy, and not about investing in manufacturing or setting up things in because that's what we mostly talk about, how to invest in manufacturing and infrastructure. But today is not about that, it's about philanthropy. Today I will share how we have actually been able to successfully partner with the African Development Bank and the Big Win Philanthropy on an issue that is very, very close to my heart, namely malnutrition among children. Banking on Nutrition is a program helping to generate long-term economic growth across Africa by unlocking the nutrition potential of the African Development Bank's investment portfolio. It involved redesigning the bank's investment in areas such as agriculture, water, sanitation, hygiene, social protection, health, and education to become nutrition smart and deliver a greater social and economic return alongside achieving nutrition impact, thus representing a double win for AFDB and its member countries. The Banking on Nutrition program had a three-part approach. One, integrate nutrition into the bank's portfolio and pipeline, including regional and country strategies, lending programs, non-lending programs, and other activities. Two, increase the production and consumption of safe and nutritious foods through partnerships and regional member countries and regional and private sector partners like us. Three, encourage member countries to patronize nutrition smart lending requests and investment that deliver greater social and economic return alongside achieving nutritious impact, representing a double win for everybody. The project was able to impact on the bank's multi-sectoral nutritious action plan, which set out the bank's vision, strategic priorities, and actions for nutrition from 2018 to 2025. Each sector had its own target, with agriculture and health being the most ambitious at 50%. WASH at 15%, social protection at 10%. The multi-sectoral nutritious action plan will then contribute towards building a continent-wide gray matter infrastructure through its contributions to a 40% reduction in stunting on the continent by the year 2025. I'm sure President Adesina will be happy to give us an update on this work, and that was successful with catalytic funding by AFDB and Big Win Philanthropy. We are very, very committed, and we want to do more. Thank you very much.
Alhaji Aliko Dangote, thank you very much, sir. A gentleman who wears many, many hats. And as they say, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. As we said earlier, this is somebody who does not believe in the word impossible, and he's proved that over and over again. Thank you very much for your commitment. We will now transition to the African Union Commission. So it really is a delight to have with us this morning Her Excellency Minata Samate Sesuma, the Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development at the African Union Commission. Please give her an even warmer welcome than we've given all of our speakers prior to now, and she comes forward to give us a continental perspective. Your Excellency, the podium is yours. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Moderator. Your Majesty, Leslie, Kingdom of Lesotho champion, African Union champion on nutrition, Her Majesty, the Queen of the Kingdom of Lesotho, my brother Adesina, Dangote, and I salute all partners. I'm happy this morning to see these philanthropies engaged for nutrition. I say thank you to all of you and for being with us this morning. I'm deeply honored to take the floor this morning and seeing leaders advocating for nutrition in Africa. I'm proud. I'm happy to see that one. This is in the line of our Agenda 2063, talking about healthy population and well-nourished population. I know the challenges. I won't repeat. My brother Adesina talked about challenges of nutrition in Africa. And also thank you, our brother Aliko Dangote, for your engagement and all partners. When I listen 50 million, wow, I'm happy to see that. Thank you so much for all philanthropies for your engagement, because the root causes of malnutrition are huge, and we need to work together. And seeing philanthropies engaged, I can say that it is important for us to have such strategic initiative. And we have our strategy on it, but this will help us to implement this strategy, our action plan on nutrition, and over plan it at the level of Africa. And I would like also to say today's meeting is very important for us, because nutrition, school feeding is very important, and we have a team of year on 2024. And if our children are not well nourished, they won't succeed in school, and that's why today's meeting is very important. By adopting that approach, multi-sectoral and collaboration, and especially for investment, this is very important. That will achieve successful implementation of the team of 2024. These initiatives are very important with a partnership, demonstrate today that we can work together. African Union, our member state philanthropies, and we couldn't achieve all these things without His Majesty. I'm working with him. I can see his engagement for nutrition. And are you to say if we have all African leaders engaging like him, we will finish with malnutrition, especially for our children? Thank you so much, Your Majesty. as I conclude, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to His Majesty, Her Majesty, and all philanthropies here, the high podium, for convening this important meeting. And us as African Union, we still fast commitment to collaborative effort with all pertinent stakeholders to attain the shared objective of a healthy and well-nourished citizen in Africa. This is very important for us. I don't know, moderator is, yeah, no, I know to invite the king or you will do it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency Minata Sesuma, for your kind remarks and providing strong commitment here of the African Union Commission's solidarity with our objectives. Our next remarks are not just remarks, but rather a royal statement, as they should be. His Majesty King Letsie III of Lesotho is truly a remarkable global icon and a champion for food security and nutrition in Africa, as well as an advocate for the transformation of food systems. And this is something he has done for many, many years, long before it became vogue. His exceptional and visionary leadership in this space highlight for us how sovereign nations can partner effectively, strategically, and in very impactful ways with financial institutions and philanthropic entities to make food insecurity a relic of the past. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this morning, I just want to crave your indulgence. Kindly rise and give a warm, rousing welcome to His Excellency, His Majesty, King Letsie III.
Your Majesty, Mayor Masenate, Honorable Minister of Finance, Mayor Adelaide Ritsitsu Matlanyane, Dr. Adeshina, President of the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellency, Minata Sinmate Sesuma, Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs, and Social Development of the African Union Commission. And may I be allowed to convey my greetings to all the partners who are here today and say to you, all protocol observed. It is a profound honor to stand before you today on this significant occasion where we gather to address the pressing challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for our continent. As we convene in this room, the gravity of our mission is unmistakable. We find ourselves at a critical juncture in shaping Africa's future, a moment that calls for collective action and unwavering commitment. I address you today not as the King of Lesotho and the African Union's nutrition champion, but also as a father, deeply concerned about the socio-economic struggles that impact the health and well-being of our people. I have witnessed firsthand the challenges that our communities face. Yet, I'm equally inspired by the vast potential that our continent holds. The statistics that bring us together today are not mere numbers. They represent the lived experiences of millions. Currently, there are 282 million undernourished individuals in Africa, which constitutes 20% of our continent's population, the highest prevalence of undernourishment globally. Alarmingly, nearly 60 million children under the age of 5, 1 in every 3 children, suffer from stunted growth. This stunting not only hampers their physical development, but also impairs cognitive abilities, diminishes educational performance, and ultimately affects economic productivity in adulthood. Furthermore, around 40% of women of reproductive age, that is between 15 and 49 years, are afflicted by anemia. The high rates of stunting and anemia contribute to adverse health outcomes and pose significant barriers to economic development by impacting productivity and educational attainment. These figures are not just statistics. They are our children, our future, and our collective responsibility. However, I do not stand here before you in despair. Instead, I stand here filled with hope, determination, and a profound respect for the collective power that is present in this room. Today, we are formalizing the End School Age Hunger Fund through the signing of the letter of intent between the African Development Bank Group and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. This initiative represents more than just a program. It is a bold affirmation of our shared vision for Africa, a vision where no child has to choose between learning and eating, where schools serve not only as centers of education, but also as places of nourishment for both mind and body. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the African Development Bank, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Aliko Dangote Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and all organizations represented here today. Your commitment to this cause is commendable. The initial commitment of $50 million from CIFF is not merely an investment in a fund, it is an investment in the future of Africa. Yet our work is far from complete. This fund and our collaboration must serve as a catalyst for a broader movement towards sustainable solutions that address the root causes of hunger and malnutrition across our continent. As we proceed with discussions, I urge you to think beyond the immediate. Yes, we aim to reach 10 million vulnerable children in 10 pilot countries by 2030. But let us see this as just the beginning. Let every idea shared, every partnership formed, and every commitment made today be a stepping stone towards a fully nourished, educated, and empowered Africa. Remember, we are not just feeding children. We are cultivating the next generation of African leaders, thinkers, and innovators. We are investing in the very foundation of our continent's future. Together, we can scale up impactful interventions in nutrition, climate change, job creation, youth and women empowerment, health, and governance. As we deliberate and as we decide, keep in your hearts the image of a continent transformed, a continent where every child, from the bustling cities of Nigeria to the highlands of Ethiopia, from the shores of Senegal to the plains of Kenya, from the forests of the Congo, and indeed to the mountains of Lesotho, steps into a classroom ready to learn, grow, and dream big. This is the Africa we want. This is the Africa we can build. This is the future we must create, not for ourselves, but for every African child yet to be born. Let us align our efforts with the African Union's theme of the year for 2024, which prioritizes education with a strong emphasis on nutrition. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the fruitful discussions ahead. May our words today translate into actions tomorrow, and may those actions reshape the destiny of our beloved continent. Together, we can ensure that no child in Africa goes to school hungry. And in doing so, we can build a brighter, more resilient future for our beloved continent. I thank you.
Imagine an Africa transformed and investing in the building blocks of the future. Your Majesty, King Letsie III, kindly accept our collective thanks and appreciation for your invigorating statement, your heartfelt words, and for the groundbreaking work that you continue to do on behalf of 1.2 billion Africans, more so the children of the continent. As a world-renowned author, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said, "We cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond, and in that is our power." Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we may not be able to control all that happens to us in a world of complex challenges, but as leaders, here today, you're proof positive that we can control how we respond, and therein lies your power to make a difference. King Letsie III, we do thank you, Your Majesty, for your very kind and heartfelt words. Chris Hahn, Aliko Dangote, Roy Steiner, thank you very much for your exceptionally kind remarks. And Your Excellency Sesuma, thank you also again for offering and assuring us of the AU Commission's strong support. At this point, I would like to allow His Majesty, King Letsie, to depart the room as he has another engagement coming up. But as he leaves, please once again give him a rousing round of applause. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Up next, we have the signing of a letter of intent on ending school-age hunger, the partnership that is. And this is going to be between CIF and the African Development Bank. It signals, you may be seated, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it does signal a joint commitment to tackle one of Africa's most urgent crises, hunger among school-age children. As the protocol team arranges the chairs for the signing, we just ask for your patience as that is being set up. And once Dr. Adishina comes back into the room, we will proceed with the signing. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the chair of the board and the founder of the Children Investment Fund Foundation, Chris Hunt, and the president of the African Development Bank Group, and as well, actually, that's about it. There are only two signatories to that. I think I was getting ahead of myself here. And I'm going to hand over at this point to members of the protocol team to continue with the rest of protocols as well as the signing. All right. Again, saving as much time as possible, moving with speed. Thank you very much, Dr. Additioner, for that. And once the signing is completed, I will ask that Dr. Additioner, if you could kindly, Musa, could you kindly move Dr. Additioner as well as Chris Hunt to the middle of the branding element? That will, there we go. Thank you very much.
Yay! A lot of work. Getting all these texts, we have to plan a visit. Okay, good.
And to a stronger partnership and collaboration, may all of those in attendance say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
I don't know if we all need to speak, but that's all right. Yeah. It's great. I mean, really exciting. So, yeah, and it's what this is all about. So.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. We're going to have to contract our time here and do in approximately 30 minutes or less what was intended to be for an hour. So again, as I implored us earlier, let's try and speak fast, listen fast, and we will get out of here at 11 o'clock. Our roundtable session is in 3 parts. One will be an introduction with the co-hosts with just very, very short remarks from them. The second session will be with the Aliko Dangote Foundation as well as SIF. And third, we will have open discussions with members of the audience in the time that is permitted, as well as thoughts and reflections by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina as we bring things to a close. So I'd like to, we've heard from our co-hosts. They've given us the mandate, they've laid out the terrain, and I'd like us to reflect on that in our comments. But I'd like to go first to Vice President Dr. Beth Dunford here, who leads initiatives, the initiatives of the African Development Bank, especially in the area of nutrition and food. The African Development Bank really has had a very long history of partnerships with Philanthropies as well as other institutions. How successful have those been, and how optimistic are you about what we've just heard today?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
So good morning. It's wonderful to see you all and just be very inspired about, I think, the commitment to work together that we've seen here in the room. Obviously, the $50 million commitment from SIF to work with the African Development Bank to advance school feeding on the continent is huge. And these types of partnerships with philanthropies allows us to really sort of unlock our balance sheet and do so much more. Huge leverage effect where we can really sort of help to push our sovereign lending into areas that we think that need more assistance, more incentives, and to really address specific problems. So that's what you're seeing here today with school feeding. I did want to go back to something that my boss mentioned earlier, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, which is the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa. This is the president's vision and concrete plan to mobilize $5 billion to put into the hands of women-owned SMEs on the continent. There's a huge funding gap, but yet there's the energy, the ideas, and the drive to really take forward that economic growth led by women on the continent. And through this vision, in less than 3 years, we've approved $1.8 billion in lending to women entrepreneurs across the continent. This is in 43 African countries, reaching 18,000 women-owned SMEs so far to date. Over 170 financial institutions are partnering with us on this effort. So how has this worked, right? This has worked because we've been able to unlock the bank's balance sheet to lend in what is considered to be risky environments. Now, we know that lending to women is not actually risky, but there's a perceived risk. So again, we needed to come in with some de-risking elements in order to make financial institutions comfortable that if they receive losses, we could then mitigate those losses. So we had guarantees from donor partners, from foundations that helped us unlock this money going forward. We also work to help women-owned SMEs become bankable. Many of these women are operating outside the financial, are not able to enter the formal financial market. They don't have the skills, the background, technologies that they need. And again, so we provide technical assistance to help get them to the level to become bankable. That comes, again, with usually grant donor assistance that helps us be able to do that in addition to unlocking our big balance sheet. And then also technical assistance, frankly, to help banks become womenable, right? How do we help them really think as women of customers to design the right types of products that will enable women to borrow more effectively? So again, large amounts of money that are being able to be unlocked, but it couldn't be done without partnerships with donors and philanthropies like you see here. So again, we're looking to push this out further and already doing this in the agriculture space, focusing on SMEs that really target the last mile, those unseen smallholder farmers that need inputs, that need access to markets, and it all needs to be done through financial intermediaries. So again, there's a lot more we can continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dunford. I just wanted to quickly follow up there with regards to some of the de-risking instruments that you've talked about, or I could come to Hasatu later on that. The MDBs, one of the characteristics of the MDBs is their leveraging power. How does that work with some of the partnerships that you've developed over the years?
I mean, there are lots of different financial tools and de-risking mechanisms, but again, you can leverage, usually 10 to 1 if we have a first loss guarantee, if we have other risk-sharing mechanisms. We can go into markets, and then, we can leverage 10 times the sort of first loss that we have. What we can do is we can guarantee losses for financial institutions. So again, if they agree to lend, we can also incentivize their lending by facilitating mitigations of costs that it takes to lend in some of these more expensive environments.
Thank you very much. We're going to come next to the Rockefeller Foundation, represented this morning by Wadsanai Muchenje. And you've had the Rockefeller Foundation over the years has had a very strong collaborative partnership with the African development on many initiatives, but particularly through the trust fund that you've invested with the bank, especially in the area of the Global Energy Alliance for People and the Planet. What is it that philanthropy really can learn from some of the experiences that you've had with the African Development Bank, and why would you recommend that?
Yes, and thank you so much for the question. So maybe I can just start by giving a little bit of context.
And if you could speak directly into the microphone, that would be appreciated.
Sorry, is this any better? All right, thank you so much. And maybe if I could start by giving a little bit of context here about the Rockefeller Foundation. So the Rockefeller Foundation is one of the oldest philanthropies. It turned 111 years old in May, but it's also one of the smallest. So if you look in comparison to BMGF, which has an endowment of 75 billion, Novo Nordisk Foundation has an endowment of over 100 billion, RF's endowment is actually really small, so it's at 6 billion, and we work with 5% returns. Now, we're not going to address all the challenges with 5% of 6 billion per year. That's about 300 million per year that we have available to us. And I think the approach that we're taking now is called a big bets approach, where we don't want to sprinkle money across areas, because we're not going to move the needle doing that. So it's with that in mind, really, that we created an entity like the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, which is a 1.5 billion commitment with the IKEA Foundation and the Bezos Earth Fund. And I think generally in reflecting on GAP and some of the other coalitions that we've brought together is we need to work across sectors and we need to work across partners. And our big push at the moment is working with local actors in particular and looking strongly at local philanthropies. So how do we bring them on board so that they are part of co-creating and financing the solutions?
Thank you very much. And aside from the energy partnership that you do have, what is your major area of focus as Rockefeller Foundation today in Africa?
So we have 3 key areas. So like you said, we have energy, we're in the food space, particularly looking at school meals, and we're also in health. So really looking at the nexus of climate and health. As you know, the foundation last year became a Climate in Everything Foundation, so all of our work is at the nexus of climate.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we're going to look at some of the opportunities that we do have, and I'm going to come to Zahan Mamadou, the Deputy CEO, and I hope I'm getting that right, of the Aliko Dangote Foundation. And I'd like to find out here what your experience has been in the relatively short period of time that the Aliko Dangote Foundation has been around, as you explore the engagement structures that are available. What is it that you're doing at this point as a foundation? Oh, sorry. Oh, I was looking in the wrong direction. Zuera Yusufu, kindly forgive me. It's a function of the head. It's a function of the head, certainly not of the heart. We did have to juggle some name changes earlier, so again, I do greatly apologize. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, and perfectly excusable.
Thank you.
Apologies, Mr. Dangote, and the rest of the team had to run on because we had a last-minute conflict. So leveraging underpins what we do. I mean, similar to the Rockefeller Foundation, we're actually even smaller than they are. So, you know, if we just relied on our resources, we wouldn't get anywhere. So in everything, pretty much everything that we do, partnerships are integral, and leveraging partnerships our primary focus area being nutrition, and nutrition, as President Adesina knows very well, is multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary, and it's one of the reasons why we've particularly liked working with the bank on the Banking on Nutrition program. It's exactly that, and it was just perfect timing that President Adesina was at the bank at this time, so he immediately got what we were talking about, and the bank was really receptive to adjusting. So we'd really like to see that expand beyond this singular institution. I understand that the bank is already working with other development finance institutions who are looking to learn from this. I think more and more development partners are beginning to realize that single issue approaches don't really get us where we need to, given how intertwined everything is, particularly as, again, my colleague mentioned, the issue of climate and environment is dominating all issues. So this is one of the reasons why when we were invited, I must say last minute, to consider this program, we immediately were like, yes, absolutely, we'll lend our support to it and would like to encourage other philanthropies. I'm particularly pleased to see my friend Benga Oyebode here, who's heading the Africa Philanthropy Forum, because that is another approach that we are taking to say that individual philanthropies are not going to make a difference, let's be honest. So the more we come together and collaborate and work together and find solutions together, the better all around.
Thank you very much. Alhaji Dangote spoke earlier about feeding 12,000 school-age children every single day. You've had quite a bit of experience doing that in Nigeria. Are there plans to scale that up in other parts of the continent?
Well, first and foremost, it's more than just school-age children. The program covers various aspects. There's hospitals, prisons, local neighborhoods, as well as school-age. But to be honest with you, it's not one of our favorite programs because it's almost like the proverbial feeding the man rather than teaching him how to fish, providing the fish. And that, again, speaks to why we like working with the bank, right? Because the FDB has a big focus on infrastructure. And it's the infrastructure that underpins the capacity for individuals to be independent and self-reliant that is more important than direct individual interventions.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to come next to the person I was looking at earlier, inadvertently, Faustina Finn Iyame, the Executive Director of CIF here. Now, philanthropy only accounts for 1% of the development needs in Africa. We have a long way to go to catch up, I think, with other parts of the world. But CIF has been a big proponent of what we call the silent P in philanthropy, public and private engagement. How successful have you been in crowding public matching and working together with public capital to match grant locations on the continent?
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I follow on from, the two previous speakers.
And if you could also kindly speak directly into the microphone.
Yes.
Thank you.
I take off from where the two speakers have just, said that, philanthropy can't do it on its own. And I think that philanthropy has learnt the lesson the hard way, that we have to pull our funding together to make a more impactful and more sustainable impact in all the areas that we want to work in, and more strategically and more integrated. Siloism is not helping us, and it has never helped us. We've defragmented, whether it's health, agriculture, development, everything that we've kind of gone into so far has been fragmented because the way we have approached the problem, right? So at CIF, we have been working more and more in pulling funds together, private sector, philanthropy, public sector, making sure the lazy capital that lies in many economies, really trying to help sweat that every single dollar. And I'll give you an example of the work that last year with the Gates Foundation, the Crown Prince Court in Abu Dhabi, and also SIF and Delta Philanthropy, we actually announced a 500 million fund, which is addressing NTDs. Two, we want to eradicate and eliminate NTDs from that, and that's a really important aspect for us. We've also got examples of our Africa Capital Hub, which is an initiative that we launched earlier on this year. We have right now 5 areas that we're focusing, 5 missions that the Africa team is driving, but we know the biggest challenge for us in achieving all of this is the right kind of financing, and how we unlock capital within Africa and elsewhere to make sure that those particular missions are successful. So that particular instrument and platform is helping us do that. And so I think my key message is that as philanthropy and also institutions like DFIs and institutions like Africa Development Bank, they can do things that we can't as philanthropy, right? African Development Bank can work on policy around scale, work with governments to really think through how they're going to sustain some of the work that we have initiated. So this has been an exciting morning for us. Beth and I have been co-conspirators for a year or so on this, and we want to do more. Right? We want to do bigger things. Chris doesn't know it because he's not in the room, but I have a big vision around this. This is just the start, and we want to bring others with us, So I think all of us in this room tell a friend to tell a friend about this fund that we started and how we're going to feed African children in a sustainable, cost-effective, scalable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Faustina. In addition to the words of your founder, very, very, very heartfelt, and we do commend SIF for the excellent work that you're doing, not just in terms of the direct impact on the lives of children across Africa, but also the advocacy in this space. Very much appreciated. I'm going to come next to Matthew Reed with the Aga Khan Foundation. You're an operating foundation, not a grant-making one. In what ways do you feel that the Aga Khan Foundation can even much better and much more collaboratively work with the AFDB to achieve the objectives that we're talking about today? Again, it's a very directional. Yeah, it's a very directional mic.
Great. Well, thanks very much. As you say, we're an operating foundation, not a grant-making foundation. I think we've already worked with the bank in several ways, some of which are fairly straightforward. One of the things that we do as an operating foundation, to pick up Beth's phrase of de-risking, we tend to de-risk at the project level. So, for example, right now we've been working for 10 years on a very large hydropower project on the borders of Burundi, Congo, and the DRC. Burundi, Rwanda, and the DRC. That will be a $700 million project, right? So we've been working that through for 10 years to get that to a point where African Development Bank and all the other banks will be able to invest. That's the sort of thing we've been doing with you all for a very long time, whether it's in the area of power, financial services, et cetera. From the foundation side, where we're also active, I think what's interesting is perhaps there's some examples from other parts of the world. So we've recently started working with the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, the Global Partnership for Education at the implementation level in the country level. So what we're doing is we're co-financing with them activities, we're managing coalitions of partners, and we're connecting work on the ground at the community level, which is where we're really based, connecting it back to national governments, and ensuring that you get that deep sort of project penetration, if you will, at the community level. So that's something where when we can use our capacity as an operating foundation, along with our financial capacity to co-finance and develop things for the long term.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I just want to commend again, just like all of the foundations here, the excellent work that the Aga Khan Foundation has done over the years on the continent. Exemplary work, and thank you very much for being a part of this session. I'm going to segue very quickly and connect with my dear colleague and friend Hasatu Nsele here, particularly with regards to the climate action window that the bank does have. What are your thoughts on how we can even better partner with some of our foundations here, and how can they take advantage of some of what we do have to offer as a bank? And while you're on that, I just want to, there's been a whole lot of conversation about the global financial architecture, redrawing that, reshaping it, and you've played a very significant role along with Dr. Adeshina in moving the agenda forward for Africa. I'd like you to tie that into your response here, because again, as Faustina said, and rightly so, siloism is dead. I think we really have to do a much better job partnering with one another. So over to you, Hasatu, for your comments.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to get this mic to work. Does it work? Oh, great. Okay. There's no red light. So thank you very much. So let me just give some kind of a context. So access to vertical funds has been very challenging for low-income countries. And we know that African countries are one of the most, or the least equipped for climate change and the least emitter. But yet they are able to only access about 3%. Two, funding for adaptation has been scarce, and we know that what Africa needs first and foremost is climate adaptation, hence the climate action window. So the African Development Fund, which is the soft loan lending arm of the African Development Bank Group, has been quite successful in deploying climate finance. Therefore, we thought that a climate action window, which is geared towards climate adaptation, 75%, which provides technical support to countries to also allow them to be in a better position to access vertical funds, is part of the solution. So we launched the climate action window at COP last 2 years ago? 3 years ago. And with December 2023, about $424 million received from countries in a pilot phase. But our aim is to bring it to 4 billion to 13 billion. Our aim is to make the climate action window, one of the main tools for climate financing on the African continent. And why are we talking about the climate action window with you today? Is because, in a unique way, what we want the climate action window to be is a cooperation between bilaterals and philanthropies. We've never had philanthropies be part of such a huge initiative within the bank, but here you, philanthropies, are going to have a seat at the table and your say as well as part of this coalition. So, we're looking forward to conversations on the climate action window, and we're sure that for all of you who are interested in climate, this is the solution in order to further climate financing in Africa. You talked about hybrid capital, and also, you didn't talk about hybrid capital, but you alluded to hybrid capital.
Actually, yeah, please.
And the international financial architecture. So basically what we know as the international financial architecture has not been working, has not been delivering or working for us because we are not in a position to deliver on the SDGs, on the Africa Union. So we've been asked as part of the G20 MDBs to work as a system. But I think that it's not MDBs just working as a system. I think that MDBs and philanthropies need to work as a system. It is very clear that we cannot achieve development without the private sector. And we know the conditions under which the private sector can be mobilized at scale. Our resources as MDBs are not sufficient. Your resources, albeit limited, is extremely powerful. So MDB philanthropies together is one solution to be able to mobilize the private sector at scale. We can work efficiently and systematically, by providing, first loss in order to unlock or allow even transactions to take life. But also you can leverage the resources. $1 for $1, or let's say $1 for $8 is much better than one for $4. So why am I saying that is because we at the African Development Bank have created an instrument. It's not designed, much more than create an instrument that is that can be used by MDBs to unlock additional resources. So it's hybrid capital. So basically, $1 billion of hybrid capital launch is $4 billion at least of additional resources that can be leveraged by the African Development Bank. But also, if you add co-financing, it can go up to $8 billion. And what is the role that philanthropies can play is that hybrid capital is relatively expensive. And by bringing in grant resources, not even grant resources, it can be even in the form of a loan, you allow an instrument you allow your resources to be further leveraged, but more importantly, to be even more impactful.
Right. I'm going to
you have to stop me.
I know there's quite a lot that we can talk about here, but the leveraging power that the African Development Bank brings to the table is one of the key reasons why philanthropies should partner with the African Development Bank. You talked about the climate action window, and I think for many people sometimes when we think of climate, we think of adaptation and mitigation. But the fact is, climate really cuts across all sectors. How is the bank mainstreaming that, and how is that relevant to the different foundations that are here at the table? I mean, how is that relevant to them, and why should they engage with you on the climate action window?
So the African Development Bank, as you know, has been a leader in terms of climate financing. And as I said earlier, there's been an ask for the UN for MDBs to do at least parity, to achieve parity with regards to climate action, with regards to climate adaptation and climate mitigation, and we've gone beyond that. There's been at the African Development Bank, the mandate or the vision of the institution, as part of the 10-year strategy, has been to how do we help Africa transition to green growth. The new strategy of the bank puts really climate at the center of what we do. There is a clear recognition that in Africa, because I don't know if you recall the discussion 2 or 3 years ago, it was, we cannot do climate and development, we have to choose. Absolutely not. And there is a clear recognition from African leaders that if you are not involved in climate financing, you are not going to be able to reach your development goals, because climate risk exacerbates your challenges. So this is something that is key, or that we have internalized, and that is part of our mandate. So in everything that we do, the climate aspects are looked at.
Thank you very much, Hester. And I'm going to come to Susanna Gable. Since 2011, approximately 13 years, the Gates Foundation has worked in partnership with the African Development Bank across several areas and sectors, probably 7 if I recall. What are the success factors that you can identify that have made this a marriage made in heaven, if I can call it that? Over to you.
Absolutely. You can continue calling it that, and that's how we're going to continue looking at it. We're very proud of this collaboration for sure. In terms of success factors in our collaboration, where we see it working best is when we can marry then our comparative advantages, which from our side is very much on the innovation side of things, and then marry that with the African Development Bank's ability to connect that to opportunities in your both public and private network, and to financiers on the continent. And one example of that being the TAT program, which we're very excited about. So Technologies for African Agriculture Transformation, where there are proven innovations developed on the continent that is then connected to financial opportunities and can be scaled through the African Development Bank. And I was very pleased to hear in the introductions the talk about not only the importance of innovation, but innovation with scaling. We can't just continue doing innovation and piloting, but actually look at what are the scalable options. And that goes also in terms of financial innovation, where you clearly, we've heard a lot here, are at the frontier, and we commend you a lot for that. And that's something we see as one of your success factors for sure as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Susanna Gable. Now, in the interest of time, because as I said earlier, we're trying to compress into 30 minutes and some of what we should have done over the period of an hour. Before I come to the audience, I'd like to provide several members of our panel with comments that are related to what we heard earlier during the first part of our session together, as well as what you see as the way forward. So in this order, I'm going to ask that Benga Oyebode of the African Philanthropy Forum, that you provide us with your perspectives, followed by Nicole Isepi of the Bezos Earth Fund, as well as Tonya Kinney with Luminate, and Natalie Delapalme Mo Ibrahim Foundation, and then we'll go to the audience. So in that order, if you could just give us your insights as well as what you see as the opportunities available to us as a continent.
Thank you very much. Really short comments. I think first to acknowledge the role that the Africa Development Bank is playing by this conversation. I think primarily what the President, Akandishino, has done is to use his power of convening to put us all into a room to have a conversation. I liken this, I sit on the board of the Ford Foundation, and I liken Akin's role to the role that Darren plays, where Ford may not have a deep pocket, as deep as some of the funds that we see today, but is able to bring people around the table to have a conversation. And so for me, that is what we're doing here today. An ability to get us talking about the issues on the continent, to get us dimensioning what we need to do. The role of the Africa Philanthropy Forum, very similar, but we have the Aliko Dangote Foundation as one of our members. But what I would like to see more is that this collaboration, this convening power, is more important than all the little pockets of activity that all of us play in. And I think that if we're able to achieve that, no better organization than the bank that can get us around the table, talk about how we can collaborate, how we can share resources, how we can solve problems. And if there's a continent that has problems, it's ours. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Benga. The convening power of the partners, dimensioning what we need to do, as well as, again, echoing the sentiments of Faustina earlier, ending siloism and working together for greater impact. Natalie, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you indeed for convening us, because I think convening is absolutely key. And given the size of the challenges...
and also, if you could speak directly into the microphone.
Given thank you very much indeed for convening us. Given the size of the challenges, we definitely need to pool resources, but I think it's not only about financial resources that we need to pool, but non-financial resources. I mean, at the Foundation, we issued last June a report which was titled Financing Africa, Where's the Money? And one of our key conclusions is, in fact, the money is there more than we think, but we just need to unearth it. We need to work on the processes of the money. We need to work on implementing pledges, on processes. It's not normal that it took 2 years to devise a mechanism by which the 650 million additional SDRs post-COVID were unavailable for Africa, and the only way to do it was to channel it through AFDB. So we are there, but it took more than 2 years. It's not normal. I mean, IMF surcharges are about to be dealt with, but how long is it going to take to implement it? Dormant ODA funds, non-bankable projects available for potential investors. So I think if we can pool resources to work on these non-financial resources, it will be absolutely key. The second thing is unlocking Africa's potential resources. There too, the resources are huge. We keep talking about potential resources, but we are not there yet. Be it tax. It's not normal that almost $50 billion have been lost to corporate tax holidays in 2019. It's not normal that the tax to GDP ratio is so low in Africa. We need to talk about illicit financial flows, to work on that. $100 billion continue to leave the continent every year. We need to talk about the way to monetize Africa's green assets, critical minerals, carbon sinking potential. We need to strengthen African FDI within the continent, not only non-African FDI. So there is a lot of things that we can do, but in order to do that, we need to pool resources, to strengthen advocacy, and also, last but not least, to change the narrative. Whatever we think between us, and I know that we all share that conviction about Africa's huge potential, it's still not mainstream. And there is no way we will attract private investment, potential investors, if we don't work on that narrative. If we don't work, of course, on the African risk assessment and coverage, but on the narrative. So this is why I think that we can, come together and indeed pool our resources. Thank you.
Very well said, Natalie, and I think your last point there will be music to Dr. Adishina's ears, who for many, many years has been a champion of reshaping the African narrative, and without that, we cannot build the foundations that we want. Excellent points on pooling financial and non-financial resources together, enhancing our processes and accelerating implementation. Thank you very much. I'm going to come next to Nicole Isepi with the Bezos Earth Fund for your reflections and thoughts.
Sorry, Nicole had to leave, and actually President Adeshina said a big hello to you, but she wanted me to convey very much in the spirit that Natalie has mentioned. I should say, by the way, my name is Wanjira Mathai, and I'm the Managing Director for Africa at the World Resources Institute, but Africa Advisor at the Bezos Earth Fund. And just really in the spirit of what Natalie said, the narrative is crucial. And actually, it's not just good to do. We know that the world will not achieve its climate or development goals if Africa does not unlock its climate opportunities. Those have been very clearly outlined, but I think that narrative is something we need to say, not only because it's good for Africa, but actually it's good for the rest of the world. I also wanted to mention at the Bezos Earth Fund, that's why we're focused on impact and scale and speed, looking at partnerships that will scale solutions and emphasize that those, and the GAP has been mentioned, but also leveraging the landscape restoration opportunities, again, Africa having the biggest ones, and investing in those through movements like the AFR 100 and in support of the Congo Basin and other 30 by 30 initiatives. The role of innovation and technology, a big part of this, and then new opportunities for collaboration. President Adeshina knows that the Bezos Earth Fund is very keen on MDB collaboration, emphasizing potential for scale and de-risking, as has been mentioned a couple of times, and leveraging funding for domestic capital mobilization and the localization of manufacturing. I think these are all key issues. The Bezos Earth Fund, uniquely one of the newer funds in the room, but also one that has given itself 10 years to exhaust its $10 billion investment. So Africa, let's go for it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Wanjeri, for very well representing Nicole Isepi at the Bezos Fund. I love what you said. Again, I think our collective voices here speak to the need to end the dissipation of effort and energy as we work together as well as ending also the paralysis of analysis. Together we can do a whole lot more to make a huge, huge difference. Toyin Akini of Luminate, your thoughts as we slowly come to a close.
Sure. Thank you. And the advantage of speaking last is that you can basically say everyone has said what you wanted to say, which is true in this case, because my reflections are, around collaborations, around learning, the learning that as a private foundation we are taking on board, and allowing this to inform the way that we work. So Luminate is a global philanthropic organization. It's a private foundation, and we work across different regions, including Africa, to make sure that technology does serve the public good, that technology works for society. And, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. It was central to conversations in the last 1 week. And we know that one of the things that I have enjoyed actually hearing and seeing put on the table is the governance of artificial intelligence, the governance of technology, and that is where Luminate operates. We've worked over the years to support civil society organizations, and we're increasingly learning what the power of collaboration is. We've explored a few collaborations on the continent and in other continents where we work, and we're seeing increasingly, that we're trying to bring about systems impact, systems change, and systems change does require an ecosystem approach. And that's basically what everyone here has said. And so what are the intersections of technology governance, and climate, for instance, and child rights, and mental health? For example, I talked about artificial intelligence. It has its transformative potential, but we've also seen examples of harms that previous technologies have brought. So how can we, as we talk about the possibilities and the opportunities, also center governance? And that's where we come into the conversation as always. But in doing this, we also identify the power of collaboration and what we are bringing on board, and we're hoping that as the Africa Development Bank, continues to advance the cause of Africa, we can also table technology governance and how we can govern these technologies to ensure that Africa, first and foremost, is included in global conversations, but also that we can play a leadership role in how that these technologies can serve the people of Africa. Thank you.
Technology, governance, an excellent point there. I just want to thank you very much, Toyin, for your comment. I just want to make sure that I haven't left out anyone here. Is Said Yassin in the room? Okay, not at all. So just before I hand over the microphone to Dr. Adeshina to provide brief closing comments, we'd like to say a very big thank you to all of our partners, all of our panelists from the Aliko Dangote Foundation, SIF, Rockefeller Foundation, Africa Philanthropy Forum, Aga Khan Foundation, Bezos Earth Fund, Gates Foundation, Illuminate, and the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Thank you very much for your very thoughtful and provoking comments, interventions. As I said earlier in our first session, all of us cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond collaboratively and together. And therein lies our collective power. I wish you all the very best. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Akiwumi Adeshina, Africa's Optimist in Chief and the President of the African Development Bank. Dr. Adeshina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Victor. I really want to thank all of you for finding time to come here in this space to think about the issue of feeding children, having how we could build gray matter infrastructure and how we invest in future of Africa. So whether it's AI, whether it's technology, you can repair a damaged bridge, a power line, a railway, but you can repair a damaged neuron in somebody's head. So this is all about how we actually invest in human capital, but also in the infrastructure that makes everything work, which is good learning, but that comes from having good nutrition. And I just wanted to tell you something about the issue of nutrition and stunting, what that really means. It's personal for me, actually, Faustina, because I went to Malawi in 2016, and I came to one particular village, and when I arrived over there, we arrived in a helicopter, and there were all these kids that ran towards the helicopter. My eye got fixated on the little kid. It was really like a runt like this, and he came close to me, and I was sure he couldn't be more than 5 years old. And so I leaned down, forward, and I said, "What's your name?" But the voice that came out got me startled. It was not actually 5 years old. It was 13 years old. And he looked at me, and I asked him, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I say, "He wanted to be a medical doctor." Oh, my son is a medical doctor in the US. So I said, there's no way with this level of severe stunting that this kid can ever become a medical doctor. And so I pick up my phone and call my wife on the spot, and I say, "Honey, look, can I adopt this kid?" My phone went quiet a little bit for 1 second. And she said, "Look, I know you. Go ahead and do it." And so we adopted a kid on the spot. Cut a long story short, from that little kid, today is my height. And in January of this year, he was admitted to the medical school in Madagascar. This tells you what the power of what we're doing. So I want to use that first to thank you, Faustine, and also to thank Chris for the fantastic generosity of Chris in putting up this $50 million towards this. And I think he said it himself, it's about building the future. The King said it's about building hope and opportunities for people, unlocking their potential. So thank you very much. Please put it up for them and thank them very much. Thank you very much, Faustine. I think that it's been a phenomenal conversation this morning. So let me frame our collective thinking here into 5 areas. I like 5 things, so I'll frame it into 5 things. So what I'm hearing is that we need convening. We should be doing more convenings. That we should be doing a lot more connecting, right? That we should be doing a lot more collaborating, right? But beyond just collaborating is co-development. In other words, co-developing things that can work. And of course, if we co-collaborate, co-develop, then we have to also do the last C, which is changing the narrative. So it's not splintering efforts, it is convening, connecting, collaborating, co-developing, and changing narratives about big issues. That's the thing. Now, I think that with us at the African Development Bank, I think what I'm taking away from this is how we can leverage for impact. And some of the things that I think that we can do a lot better, and we think about it a lot more, is how we take the work of foundations and cascade those into larger programs, right? So you need a catalyst, but that catalyst have to have some reaction that actually gets what you need. So how do we cascade that into larger programs? The second is that how do we work in country programs? Because I remember saying to Bill Gates and talk also to Chris, who were there, Aliko, I say, look, your generosity is fantastic, but your monies need to be leveraged. And you can only do that when you actually do your work within country context. So how we work together at country levels, I think it's important. Setting up risk capital, Asatu mentioned this, I mentioned in my open remarks. Your foundations can actually help to have risk capital that can leverage the huge leveraging machines of the MDBs. It's a leveraging machine, can go from 5 to 10 times, right? So you have idea, you have some money, you put it into these foundations, into the MDBs, African Development Bank, of course. It's a leveraging machine that will deliver greater returns on your investment.
Yeah.
The fourth one is when countries or grantees, because I used to work at Rockefeller Foundation myself for 10 years. So, you know, and just so that you know, a lot of what you see in the world today was actually done by Rockefeller Foundation, just so that you know. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think that the issue of how do we put together as foundations a grant pool. So in other words, the grant pool that you can collectively put together that's easier to access instead of everything being splintered. And you go, you know, but collectively, here is a grant pool of money that you put together that people can access to develop things and make big things happen. It's something I think that we should think about. The other thing is, you've heard about the hybrid capital. We absolutely want you in your foundations to take a look at a hybrid capital, because your hybrid capital, your involvement in hybrid capital can allow us to leverage 4 or 5 times of that to actually deliver more. So the family and friends tranche of that hybrid capital is something that we would like you to take a great look at. The other one is how to set up what I'm calling a philanthropic co-financing platform. You know, when you want to co-create things, you need a platform, a community of practice that get together around a platform. And so we could have a co-financing platform, say, here are things that we want to do. Here are pools of capital that we put together to do it. You know, you were talking about to enjoy the one of GIAP, but GIAP we did specifically in the case of energy. But there's so many things, you know, that we don't have to keep creating little things around the place. So I think that we could consider a co-financing platform on that. So just to close, the last thing is about governments. All the philanthropic monies in the world, all the monies of MDBs will amount to nothing without having good governance, without having political will, without having commitment. Today, you heard from the King, His Majesty, what he said over here. So government commitment is the key. And so I have five suggestions, right, on how we can scale with governments, especially. First is how to make sure that whenever we commit money, we are asking for leverage on the other side. Yeah. So as a condition, you know, you can't, somebody was saying you can't keep teaching people how to fish, you have to, to giving things away, you have to teach them how to fish. Yeah. There has to be a commensurate commitment, right? Almost like a framing thing to say, if we put in X amount of money, I need you to put in X amount of money. Yeah, so that's one. The other one is leveraging policy commitments, because you can actually do things, they succeed, a government is there, the next time another government comes, they throw that out, and everything that you've done is gone. So we have to make sure that all of our work leverages policy commitment, right? So in the case of nutrition, for example, it means that, I was talking to you and Chris, posting, you know, you put in money, the government has to say, okay, we're going to put in a budget, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So it has to be like in a covenant. It's not just a conversation that we continue to have. Often that's the problem, right? And the third one is legislation. I have been minister, and I know how you can develop great programs. When the government leaves, somebody comes in and does something sometimes crazy. And actually throws away all the great things that everybody has been doing for political reasons. I think that for us to succeed in this effort, we need to find a way of working with the legislative arm of government to have legislations that enshrine, you know, as I was telling to you about food. Food is a fundamental human right. It has to be inside of legislations of countries to be able to do that. It's not just food, for other things, access to energy, to do AI is also, energy is also a fundamental human right, you know. So I think legislation. The fourth one is long-term budget support. Because you cannot succeed to scale unless governments actually make that decision to set money aside to make those things work at scale, right? So show me your commitment not by what you say. Show me your commitment by where you put your money and how much money you put there, right? And the last thing I want to say is on private sector, which we all have talked about, the importance of leveraging private sector. And so the de-risking is the key. You know, putting up guarantees that can de-risk makes a big difference. And I think, because of the way foundations are, your monies can be set up in those kind of things to actually reduce the weighted cost of capital and de-risk the entire financial ecosystem to make things work at scale. So those are some of the thoughts, that I have. And I think that, as Natalie was saying, this kind of, and also being, we need to do more of this, but going beyond just the issue we're talking about, how do we will have more convenience around this issue if you agree about some of these issues and see how we can move them forward. Your roles are very, very important. We're very, very delighted and honored that you've taken your time out of your busy schedules to be here and do a collective thinking about how we can work together with multilateral development banks, and in this case, the African Development Bank. As I said at the UN, the future is for Africa, but we're going to take it. We're going to take it. Nobody gives you a future. You reach to it and grab it by yourself. And what we're doing is creating the alliances to allow us to be able to do that. And as Africa's issues are many, opportunities are also many. So I'm going to ask you to please rise. I'm not collecting any offerings or anything. Please just rise and put your hands with connect your hand with the person next to you. Just connect with somebody. Connecting is one of the things we said we were going to do, right? So I'm going to go back into it again. I did say convening, connecting, collaborating, co-development, and changing narrative. So let's put our hands together and let's say, let's do the 5 C's.
Let's do the 5 C's.
Let's get on with it.
Get on with it.
That's right. Good.
And I'd just like to ask our panelists to convene just outside the door here for a family photograph as we bring this session to a close. All of our panelists just outside the door, please. Thank you.
Hello, you. You're gorgeous. What, it's in October, isn't it?